Well, I made a bold move and I pushed the car outside so that I can clean it up and clean out the garage, which is an utter disaster from all the fiberglass and plaster. And it's a bold move because right now I can't drive it back inside if I don't get the coach relay slash fuse panel logic, whatever, the brain of the car, back in properly. I'll be pushing this car back into the garage, which kind of sucks because it's a fairly steep hill here. It's about an 8-foot grade plus the little bump to get up into the garage. So that's the first order of business, is to get the garage cleaned up and then reinstall the coach logic board, and then get the car cleaned up. And if I get all that done and have time, then I'll start working on the driver's door, closing up the opening around the window so that I can make a template from there to cut the passenger side door. So I had initially intended to re-terminate all the connections when I put the coach board in, but I think I'm going to wait on that. I'm still going to do it, but after I get the top done and I work on the interior, I think I'm going to basically reroute and re-terminate, resize all of the wires inside the cabin because it's such a mess and it's not neat and organized enough for me. So for today, I'm just going to put it back right like it was, and then see if I get everything right and the car will fire back up. Well, that wasn't too bad. It's basically lunchtime and the garage is mostly cleaned. The car's mostly cleaned. And the coach board is back in and the car fired up on the first try. And the brake lights and blinkers work like it's supposed to. So the firmware flash worked great. So I'm gonna break for lunch, and then I'm going to start working on the door here, the driver's door. What I got to do is close up all the extra gap here from where I had trouble figuring out exactly the angle of the window with fiberglass, so that I can then use that to make a template that I'll mirror and flip over to do the passenger side. So I'm gonna get a little video of that after lunch, hopefully. All right, I got the window taped up. You can see where I'm trying to extend it here and here, where it was angled too far that way initially. So I'm gonna let that fiberglass cure overnight, and then tomorrow I'll come back out and try and cut it smooth and blend it with some Duraglass, and then I'll be able to make a template for it and cut the other side maybe. So good stuff. A lot of progress today. Spent most of the time cleaning the garage. It had an inch of dust on the floor, so we got all that out and got the motor rewired, took it up, retuned it, took it for a drive. Everything looks good, so happy about that. Maybe tomorrow we'll get the passenger's door, or in the passenger's window, put in. Well, it's not as pretty as I'd like, but I have a pretty consistent slot for the window. So what I've got to do now is try to make a template to transfer this to the passenger side. So my plan is to, I don't know that this like width here will be exactly consistent between the two doors. But I think this line here should be. So I'm gonna make a template that comes off this edge down that line and then back around, and transfer it to the other side and see how close it comes. And if it's way off, then I'll have to do the same thing I did here, start opening it up and adjusting it, and then fill it back in when I'm done. Now this is obviously not finished. I've got to have some belt line that goes on either side for the window to slide in between, so I haven't finished this edge out yet, and I still don't know exactly how I'm going to finish it out, and I won't until I buy some belt line. So let's see what it comes out like. Well, this is what I came up with. I decided probably the most consistent line between the two doors would be this back edge here. So I trimmed my paper to fit that line and follow it around to here. And then I marked this line here that's on the body line, and I think between those two, it should get me really close. Even if Factory 5 didn't trim through here consistently between the two doors, that line and this body line here, I think will get me lined up close enough. So what I got to do now is take this off and then flip it over, and hopefully that line is still dark enough to see when I flip it over so that I can line it up on the other door. It'll have to be flipped over to give me the inversion for the other door. That actually worked out pretty well, I think. The line of the door lined up real well, and this body line lined up real well. So I've marked out the corners and then some dotted lines, and I'm going to pull this off, and I'll use a straight edge to try and get a cleaner cut on this side than I had on the driver's side. Yeah, that was so much easier than the first side now that I knew what I needed to do. It took me and Dad all day, probably 6-8 hours, to get that driver's side window where we wanted it. This one, 2 hours start to finish, max, maybe even an hour. Kind of been watching some football while I was working, so very, very happy with that. So I'm gonna pull this glass out now. I'm not gonna leave the glass in, and what I have to do now is start trying to make a template from the driver's side that I can invert and bring over here to the passenger side so that the two sides are symmetrical. So my plan there is to try and use the best I can my contour gauges and trace that onto some large pieces of cardboard till I get a good fit on what I've got there, and then I'll be able to take the invert of those cardboard pieces to make like a skeleton of ribs for the other side that I can then stretch the fiberglass across and put the rosin on it. So probably gonna have to wait till another day though, so probably be next weekend actually. I think we're probably about to wrap this video up and enjoy a weekend well done. So thanks for watching, guys.